Good evening, everybody. Welcome to an Around the Ropes YouTube exclusive right here for you on our YouTube channel. I'm John, and I am joined by a guest tonight who, if you have seen this guy in the ring before, you know he's a big heel, but he's also one of the better minds in this industry. He's currently one half of your tag team champions for Immortal Championship Wrestling in upstate New York. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Ben Hamin. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Yes, that's right, John the Plane. There's no magic here for you. I might make you disappear as I invade Around the Ropes podcast here tonight. For all you pathetic Immortal Championship Wrestling morons out there, bring your $5. It's time for the face slap as Hacker Hamin arrives. Around the Ropes podcast. Y'all.
How you doing tonight?
Oh, man, I'm having a good time, man, as always. Just had a little live watch-along session with my Hamin Media Group faithful watching AEW, and I know we had a little issue getting our times lined up, but that's work and life, so I'm glad we can hang out here, man, for a little while and talk some wrestling together.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this big time. Now, let's go back to what got you into wrestling initially.
Well, my dad was a legit state champion and collegiate super heavyweight champion. So when I was a little kid, I'd hear these stories about it. But at that time in the early 80s, WWF was blowing up. And my dad was also a pro lumberjack competitor. So I would be on the circuit and I would see all these guys that looked like everybody on WWF. So in my mind as a little kid, my dad was... my dad could have been in the ring with all the guys I work now, from Hacksaw Jim Duggan to whoever at that time, right? So all these characters in my life were just I was on a carny circuit with that. And then I was watching wrestling when I was like 6, 7 years old. When I was 8, we went to Saturday Night Main Event in Syracuse, and I saw Andre stood right next to my dad. And like, since that, it was I've never missed a week since I was 8 in probably 1985. So, to go through the entire rise of ECW and WCW and the Attitude Era and all that kind of stuff, man, it was just great being a teenager in the 90s and having that as a very cool creative outlet to watch.
So now, growing up, were you more WWE, WCW, or ECW?
I was definitely a WWF, WWE, ECW, Northeast guy, So not that I didn't, eventually watch. I mean, I watched everything Nitro and Thunder-wise, but those early WCW NWAs where it's like a bunch of Southern hillbillies in a studio wrestling with a piece of twine holding them back. Meanwhile, Vince is putting on Vegas show style, to me, being a northern guy, to look at that was just like everything country bumpkin South that you're kind of brought up on as a Northeastern prick. But now I go back, or when I was learning this craft for real at OVW, I can watch those matches and see the brilliance in all of them. And the Southern style is what I was really trained in by Rip Rogers and Al Snow and Danny Davis. So even as a fan, if I didn't appreciate the lack of spectacle, the foundation and fundamentals and Jim Cornette mentality is really what is the foundation of my training when it comes to the wrestling side of things.
So you just said before you got your training in OVW. Mm-hmm. What years were you there?
2006 to 2009.
Okay. So you were there after the John Cena's, the Brock Lesnar's, and all that.
Yeah. I wasn't in the locker room at the same time coming up and training with them because that's class of 2004. But like Cena came back and that was our biggest show, and he wanted to work with me and the Insurgency on our Six Flags show. But Danny Davis told him no because we've been in a 6-month program with the Iron Man, Rob Conway and Pat Buck. So we were paying off our heat, even though when Cena sees us, he's about to come out with 13 Marines and a Humvee on 4th of July. So why wouldn't you want to give the terrorists an FU, in our biggest house? But Danny Davis is the boss, and we had built a program, and I wouldn't never betray the amount of trust and time Rob Conway put into us. So were we excited about the possibility? Yeah. And then Brock Lesnar came when he was UFC champion. So, that's a revolving door of who's going to come in the next day and like, holy shit, Dusty Rhodes is here, JBL's here, Eminem's here, the Spirit Squad's here, Mark Henry's here, the Boogeyman's here, and that's just on average, you know what I mean? So when I was there, like Robert Gibson and Dr. Death were two great coaches that were coming through at the same time. So if you're a sponge and you love this business, you have to put yourself where the best of the best are. And OVW at that time, was the Harvard, or still is, you could say, the Harvard of professional wrestling.
Well, we actually just had last week. We actually interviewed Mike Mondo.
Well, Mondo's my best man. Matt Mondo was my best man in my wedding when I eloped, and I lived with Mike for a while, and just one of my closest friends in wrestling. And in my opinion, obviously a Rip Rogers guy, which a lot of us are, and we attribute our success to that. But Mondo, one of the best wrestling minds in the business that helped me improve, going from just a manager mouthpiece to a tag team wrestler to a solo act and beyond. So I attribute a lot of my knowledge and polishing to Mike Mondo. Awesome guy.
Yeah, we spoke to him last week in about a 40-minute interview, and just the knowledge he has about this industry.
Sure.
And it's like when he was in WWE, he basically was a cheerleader.
Well, a lot of guys that are going to be the best of the best and might be trained to do 1,000 things, their character doesn't call for it. Just because you don't see it as a fan doesn't mean they don't know how to do it or how to play that part, where another guy who had an unbelievable run and didn't have to do hardly anything, he got to do everybody's comeback and get over and work with everybody, is Nick Dinsmore, Eugene, another Rip Rogers guy, one of the greatest trainers on the planet. And Mondo learned from Rip and Dr. Tom Pritchard. And some guys' minds are just wired. Like, they're great performers, both of them, don't get me wrong, but they may be even better coaches as far as that goes. Santino Marella, another Rip Rogers guy who's passed it on. Pat Buck, who helped create MJF, Zach Ryder, Kurt Hawkins. All these are OVW guys who are rocking the business and creating the next generation of young talent, man. So it really all comes down to Rip Rogers training, Al Snow's TV booking and directing, and Danny Davis's ownership of a great company.
I mean, I've heard stories about how Rip Rogers was as a trainer, but you look at the list. I mean, you just said it before. If you look at the list of the guys who were under his tutelage over the years, it's like a who's who in professional wrestling.
You want to bitch about getting swear at and all that kind of stuff in this business, or you want to put your ego aside, because all that's just to test you of, are you going to be triggered? So just be humble and take it in. And the best of the best were trained by Rip, and even guys who didn't train nearly as long have show stealing matches. That's why people like Pat McAfee and Killer Cross, and they seek out Rip, because they hear about that, and they want to be the best, and Rip will make you the best, because he doesn't give a damn, and he'll tell you exactly when you're rotten, and then he'll tell you how to fix it after he swears at you for 20 minutes. But if you can take that, then you're going to learn the lesson, and he only does that for effect, to be like Full Metal Jacket drill sergeant, to be Mick from Rocky. Well, without Cus D'Amato, Mike Tyson wouldn't have been the best of all time, right? So that's what Rip really is a level of teacher that way, and he's passed that knowledge on to guys like Mondo and like I said, Dinsmore, Damian Adams, and Pat Buck, and anybody else who's opening a school is going to take that level of teaching. They might not be as abrasive as Rip, but that's what makes Rip Rogers Rip Rogers. So
yeah. But now, obviously, people know when they've seen you in the ring, you're the foreign heel slash terrorist character.
Mhm.
Was that your idea to go with that character, or was that something that was presented to you beforehand?
Well, I was at OVW when we were just trainees because there was contract guys and non-contract guys. Contract
Mhm.
guys were Al's class, non-contracts could be both, and in Rip's class and beginners if you wanted, I guess. But like, there was two guys there, Ali and Omar. Well, Khalil and Muhammad Ali, Vaez, Khalil Gaspard, and I showed up, and we were sitting there, and Rip's and Khalil is Lebanese and Ali is Iranian, but born and raised in Kentucky, so he has a Southern accent. And I was the acting guy, and Rip said, "You look like a Packy. You're with those two, and you guys will be you guys will be the Packies." And at that time, but what he means is Pakistanis. At that time, we're in the red hot post 9/11
Oh,
George Bush era, Iraq war, gas prices going from 2.25 to 4.75 over the course of 2 years. And just we're in a war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And every day on Fox News, they're just saying insurgency, insurgency, insurgency. So we were the insurgency. And I was the mouthpiece. And I'm a very big into conspiracy theory. So, which I still am for 9/11 truth because it still hasn't been addressed properly. So if the Saudis are behind it and bin Laden's part of it and he's Saudi and there's 19 Saudi hijackers, I just made myself the Prince of Saud, 19th Prince of Saud, right? So I put a lot of numerology and thought into everything I do, and I try and blur those lines of what's real and what isn't, and what people see on the news and their PTSD from wars that they know were wrong and terrorist attacks that they know were lies that were still unsolved. And I press those buttons, and then when I lose, they feel better, and it pays off that PTSD a little bit through the art. But while we were there, also I had a bodyguard, Turkan Çelik, who was from Toronto, who was Turkish, and then Serena Deeb from AEW, who's half Palestinian. I kidnapped her and rewired her brain, So it doesn't matter from Guantanamo Bay to reinventing the character later as Hacker Hamin when it was all the stuff with Edward Snowden and all that kind of stuff. So whatever's like really in the conspiracy, deep state war realm, from George Bush to Obama era, I just try to incorporate it in everything. To Epstein Island, like Ben Hamin loves Epstein Island.
yeah. But now, obviously, now you've done a lot of your time with Immortal Championship Wrestling in upstate New York. How did you get brought into that company?
Well, let's make no mistakes about it. Let's tell the real tale. And I love working at Immortal, and I love having such a hand in shaping and helping talent and passing my knowledge along too. And Mike King is easy enough to work with and listens to direction most of the time. But before that, he was working with Chris Envy at Dynasty, which there was just a reunion show that nobody asked for, and we took the gate from that, GGP and I. But Mike was working with Chris, and the reason Chris went from a smaller upstart indie is because, and you might know if you're in the Northeast, you'll know Dynasty, Immortal, Excite, UPW's kind of Rochester, ESW, and some others out in Buffalo. But to be honest with you, it's all 2CW country, in my opinion. And it's all been an echo of what 2CW was, and really what we did in 2CW in from Albany to Niagara Falls, all the way up to Potsdam. 2CW ran New York State and some of Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania, and was one of the most pure independents that will echo an ECW style diehard fan base. That Immortal's great, Dynasty's great. I've been glad to be able to work there, but they don't cultivate that fan bloodlust for the company that 2CW had. So really what you're seeing is the ripple effect of after 2CW closed in 2015, of, I don't want to sound like a dick, but the bones being picked, you know what I mean? And wrestling's going to go on and morph and continue, and owners are going to come in, and what was once great is going to get chopped up and then hopefully be rebuilt. But there's such a hardcore love for wrestling in central New York and in the Northeast in general that I'm glad people are running, that we have shows and companies to work for. But to go, like, I'm not going to be blind, like, it's a mortal country. Like, if anybody with the right dollar wanted to come in and take over, it wouldn't be a hard coup d'etat. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
like that.
to me, this is in the wake of 2CW, because that was what really made my career. And Josh and Steve and Lovins and a lot of those guys put faith in me to work with younger talent and then to work with legends. So that's where I got a chance to work with Slaughter, Duggan, Piper, Tracy Smothers, you know, and the Young Bucks and other guys, just name dropping here. Who else? Man, he played for Syracuse and he's in Impact. Moose, like guys like that. So I could be working with under indie guys for 2 months, and then all of a sudden I'm in the main event with a former WWE legend. So that was great. And I got to do that at OVW too with Mick Foley and obviously working with Rob Conway and Nick Dinsmore and stuff like that. So I've been very fortunate to get the rub from guys who are legends in this business, you know.
Ben, the one thing with this show, we always tell people that they may not like what we say because we always tell the truth here.
Yeah.
That's the one thing we always push for.
Well, that's what Hamin Media Group is too at channelattitude.com. And that's why I don't care if it's not, I don't try to do hot takes just to do hot takes. But if the situation calls for the truth and call some dumb shit out from whether it's Braun Strowman who can't put down Twitter or, the girls of AEW selling for the dumbest shit ever, like, I'm going to call you out for what it is. And I've paid my dues in this business. And before that for 16 years, and I've made it to the top on my own. And people are like, well, I never saw you on Raw. Well, I'm not here to be like, this is what I did, but I got us a deal to consult with USA Network at the highest level for Stevie Richards, Vince Russo, and myself. So I don't have to fucking answer to nobody's stakes about what they think because I was never on SmackDown. Like, what they don't know about me can fill a book. Me being behind the scenes was everything. The Ben Hamin character is all icing on the cake. I got into this business to be the best writer and director of wrestling in history. And now my business partner is Vince Russo, and I was working with the USA Network president. So anybody who wants to talk shit about me, feel free. I know what I've done, and my bank account says so.
And with me, like, I'll turn around, and I actually said to somebody recently, I'll be the first one to say I never have taken a bump before. I'll be the first one to say that. But when we're doing our show, every Tuesday night, I'm not going to sit there and sugarcoat it because, 3 people don't want to get their feelings hurt. To me, one thing I've always stressed in doing my podcasting career is I want to say it black and white. I've had people ready who have gotten pissed at me for what I've said. But then I have had people on the other side who have said, you actually have a point there.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone's got their opinions. It's just what's best business, and can you show an example of why this has or have not worked in the past, and what adjustments can be made, or else are you just going to business for yourself because it's ego driven, which is a big part of this business.
I totally get that, trust me, but I want to get back.
So any indie haters out there who want to say, do the classic, who the fuck is he, like, keep doing that. That just means to me, you don't know shit about shit, and I'm really good at kayfabe until I do interviews like this.
Well, I tell people is, you may not agree with me, but thank you for listening.
Yeah, hey, the worst thing in wrestling is if they're not talking about you, good or bad, right? So,
I love it when I see people who turn around and they go, "Oh, these guys on this show don't know what they're talking about." Yet, mind you, in 2 weeks we're about to hit our 1-year anniversary. So, we kind of know what we're doing.
Keep producing. That's the best thing you can do.
Oh, I totally agree. But I want to get now to when you're in Immortals, because right now you're currently the tag. You're one half of the Immortal Tag Team Champions with Blaze Haram. How did your paths?
Oh, no, that's Haram.
How did your paths cross?
Well, Blaze Haram kind of came onto the indie scene I would say about 3 years ago now, maybe, and he's had quite a fast rise and done the work in the gym, done the work in the ring, and he was kind of a Rick Recon protege, and I think they split, but recently down in Jersey, Recon realigned and came to his senses and backed Blaze Haram to become a champion down there. So he learned a fair amount being in ring with Recon and riding the roads with him early on. And he started coming to shows. And then as soon as everybody in wrestling wants to start shit and watch it in the locker room explode, but they're like, hey, did you see that other Arab guy on the show? And the promoters have us both on the show and they want to use him. So people are like, are they going to replace Hamin with Blaze? And I'm like, I don't sweat that. I just go, yeah, I've done the insurgency. Put me and Blaze together. We'll run this and become the top heels. Like, it's not like there's one Arab guy in the world. Like, if we're going to be a terror cell, give me more dudes. And here's the other thing. I'm not getting any younger. Blaze is a little bit younger than me. And let Blaze take my bumps. Like, I got no problem taking half the bumps and making the same payday, So, but Blaze, I try and impart as much wisdom as I can onto him. And I'm not trying to say anything about Blaze. He'll probably listen to this and pop, but like sometimes Blaze coming from the indies will want to do things that are too cool for what we are. You know what I mean? And I gotta reel him back and like just poke him in the eye and try and pull his ear off. Don't worry about doing a Michinoku driver right here. Just pretend to just go and try and pull his eye out of his head. Like that's all we need to do, So and he's gotten great. And the other thing too is a lot of times in my career I've been the mouthpiece most of the time, right? I cut the promo, I can shoot my mouth off pretty well, better than most in this business, I like to believe. But Blaze Haram can too. Blaze is a great natural promo. He was a rapper in the city coming up in his early days, and he's super comfortable on the mic. And I really like that because either one of us can be the front man, you know what I mean? And I always am a pump to pass the mic to him because I know he's going to spit it just as hard as I do, but in his own way, and then shine me. So that's something that's very cool with other tag. I mean, GGP, I've tagged with Greek God Papadon for years too, and GGP can spit it, but he's Greek. When you got two Arab guys, usually the mastermind that I am is going to take the lead, but I'm happy to pass the mic to Blaze because I know he's going to hit a home run every time too. Jerk job.
I just saw a promo that you guys actually cut where it was you, Blaze Haram, and Papadon. I think it was right before the Dynasty reunion show.
Yeah.
And I was watching this promo that you guys were cutting. I'm like, I felt the energy from you guys.
We're the best bad guys in the biz, man. We're old school heels, and we know what the fuck we're doing. As opposed to young kids who dreamed of playing wrestler who got boosted up through the factory system, and they're still not ready for TV. GGP's been in this biz for 20 years, and his swords are so sharp, and he's been on AEW, WWE, the movie The Wrestler. We've done all the podcasts with Conspiracy Horsemen. He can go on the mic for 20 minutes and have the crowd in the palm of his hand. So if you got three guys who are good mic workers, it's just about passing the mic and keeping that energy going. And people come up to us at the end of the show, even if we did next to nothing, and say, you guys are my favorite part. You made me feel like it was wrestling like when I was a kid again, as opposed to all this shit with all these moves that don't mean nothing because they don't have any emotion attached to them. Like it's nice to see acrobatics once or twice on a show, but if you got 5 out of 7 matches and everybody's doing the same goddamn enziguri, the same superplex or Tower of Doom, or the back and forth chop spot or the back and forth elbow strikes from the knees, then none of that shit means anything. And all I got to do is go out and do an eye poke and a back rake, and I'm way more of a heel than anybody else in those other 5 matches.
Well, that's one thing that I've stressed on the show is that when you see a lot of especially look at AEW as a great example, a lot of them it's, well, we're going to put wrestler A, wrestler B together. It's going to be how many, super kicks, how many moonsaults, and how much can you do in 5 minutes. Yet you go to WWE and you look at a Cena match, and you look at a match that Taker did back in the day. They did a few moves, but you remembered.
It's when you do them and when you come up off the cell and on your comeback and hope and giving the crowd hope and drawing them in, and then the heel does something that's just so dastardly to take it all away again, and we start rebuilding that hero's journey. But that's the difference in kids playing superstars as opposed to adults who should have those spots. But that's the problem with the factory system of professional wrestling, churning out 21-year-olds who have the best intention and may have the love for the sport, but don't have the road miles, don't have the 10,000 hours, that to be a master of it yet. They'll get there, but unfortunately you're seeing them learn it the hard way on TV, and the product and the quality of the art suffer for it.
Now, one other thing I want to get to with your character, because I've seen quite a few videos of this, is the face slap, the $5 face slap.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come to fruition?
I was doing a 2CW show in Binghamton, and the American Wolves were there, Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, and there was a bunch of fat fans with their man tits out after the show with their shirts off, and Eddie and Davey were chopping the shit out of them because they wanted to get it on tape or whatever, have a handprint from it because they're marks for ROH or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go, how much you charge them? They're like, nothing. I go, nothing. They would have paid you $20 each for it. Eddie's like, they probably would have. I go, yeah. So really, I was like, the light bulb went off, and you as a heel, if you're subscribing to old school rules, you shouldn't be out there at intermission selling merch. As a carny wrestler, I need to make my money, so the $5 face slap thing, it's hard enough for me to sell anything as a bad guy. So I would just use it as a carnival barker thing, like Triumph the Insult comic dog, to I'll discipline your child. And parents would push their little kids over, you'll do all your homework, stop picking your nose, clean up all the dog craps off the lawn. And the parents would laugh. And then I would turn on the parents and be like, you'll stop having erectile dysfunction. You'll have a full head of hair in the morning. You'll jog 5 miles, lose that 700 pounds you need to lose, and then I would hit on his wife, because Ben Hamin is also always recruiting new wives and will take their husbands and use them as suicide bombers as well. So there's always a place for everybody. But then, kind of after about a year of using it just as a carnival barker thing to try and lure them closer to the table to hopefully buy an 8x10 or whatever, the smart marks, tape trader, masturbator, mama's basement crew started to come up to test me and be like, you won't do it. And I would get it on tape, and they put up $5, and I didn't really lay it in. They thought it was going to be some working stuff. You know what I mean? Some thigh slap city shit. Yeah. And I would slap them, but it wouldn't be that hard. And then it started to get perpetually worse, really starting to slap some people, and then some others I wouldn't. And then the last 10, everybody's pretty much gotten their face knocked off. Because if I do it soft, people will be like, oh, that wasn't a good one. So anybody who steps up now is probably getting hit almost as hard as I can hit somebody without killing them, and within reason, without a defenseless human just letting them slap their face. I'm hitting you far beyond what is right, and then nothing gets pulled, and then they want to go viral, and their face, everyone's kind of been hit in the face with a dodgeball or basketball when you're not looking, and then your face is like thumping for 20 minutes afterwards, you know? It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that for them.
Over the summer, we did a food challenge,
Yeah.
and the loser had to get a chest slap.
Mm.
So we ended up tied, me and my co-host. And the guy who I got to slap him was actually an independent wrestler by the name of Darius Carter. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I think I know the name. I don't know if I've worked any shows or not.
The one who my co-host got to slap me was Marina Shafir.
Wow, that's nice. I mean, you won out on that one.
And she actually walked me through the whole thing on it with the chest slap. And the funny part was, after the slap was done, she actually turned out, she goes, that was the easiest chest slap I've ever had to give.
Well, I mean, you got a nice set on you guys to knock into him, buddy. But I don't know. I'd have to see Marina Shafir's chops in order to judge that.
Oh yeah, no, it was. But when I tell people the story, and mind you, I didn't know who was giving me the chest slap in the weeks leading up to the challenge until right after at that point. And I was like, you couldn't pick anybody else. You had to go with the one who was part of Ronda Rousey's.
Oh, you're lucky it wasn't me. I would have laid that shit right in.
Well, the joke that we said was, there's another guy that if he was there, we would have gotten him to do it, and that's Danny Moff.
He's a strong son of a bitch too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have seen him in action a couple of times now. And
yeah, I worked a couple shows in Chicago with him. Yeah, real talented guy.
But now, obviously, other than what you do in the ring, people also know you part of Vince Russo's group. It's you, obviously, you mentioned before, you, Vince Russo, and Stevie Richards.
That's right, man.
How did that whole partnership come to be?
Stevie and myself and GGP and Big Sal Graziano from the FBI were doing a podcast called The Conspiracy Horseman for a lot of years, where we've had a lot of incredible guests, from John McAfee to Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony to David Icke, and a lot of big names. When Kenny Bolin and Vito were having some outs on Russo brand, there was a spot open for the Raw review, and Stevie had been friends for 20 years with Russo, working at Impact on the Dr. Stevie stuff and everything at WWE. So Stevie reached out and said, hey, you got to meet this guy, do a podcast with him. You're going to love him. And we'd like put our name in the hats to the show. Well, like 4 hours before that, Vince had reached out to Pat Buck and Ryback, who ended up having a big falling out from their friendship. and Stevie and I just like 24 hours later got the gig, and I started helping Russo with other things technically and marketing wise, and getting his Patreon right, and just trying to show that I can be an earner and look at his business system and apply my marketing knowledge to it. And then once we started doing the shows, he's like, this guy's creative mind is on a whole nother level, because before I did wrestling, I was in improv in Chicago for 6 years, pretty much learning from the best of the best in the world. So I bring a completely different perspective to wrestling, and then trained in wrestling for 3 years. So it kind of makes me a unique animal, and Russo appreciates me very much for that. And to have a guy who is considered the best writer, and by some the worst in the world of wrestling, but the numbers stack up for themselves. So any critics can get fucked. And if you want to argue with me, I'm easy to find. And Vince Russo is one of the best people I know on this planet, and he's just been super kind to me. So we do the Raw and SmackDown review, and then we also do a show called Master Shoot Theater, which we talk about some conspiracy or whatever the hot news is, and then we do a 10-minute improvised version of what goes on in Stamford between Vince McMahon, Deuce Pritchard, Young Ryder, Coney Tan is in there, all your favorite characters, and I do a pretty mean Vince McMahon impersonation. So that's on Russo's Patreon, but it's getting them into my improv world. But me making Russo like belly laugh is one of the most fulfilling things in my life, and I get to do that kind of every week. So I remember being even in improv and being like, wow, I could be the next Vince Russo if I applied this to wrestling. So I don't know what you believe in at home, Allah, God, Jesus, the secret, manifestation, whatever, but putting it out there 20 years ago has now brought me to having Vince Russo as my business partner, where we then do have channelattitude.com together. There's Vince Russo brand, there's Hamin Media Group that covers all the span of all the wrestling shows and locker room shows, and Stevie and I doing other stuff. But really, after 3 years of doing that, we had meetings with the Fox executives becoming consultants for SmackDown when they were worried about the numbers, and that didn't work out. They went another way. And then we got a hold of the USA Network and became consultants dealing directly with the USA Network president and Vince McMahon. So we didn't have to deal with any of the politics. We didn't have to be on the road. We could just give our suggestions, and then they could fuck them up on TV as they saw fit. So.
I'll say this much. Like you said it before, that Vince Russo gets both ends of the stick, so to speak.
Yeah, man.
I am one who will sit there and say, I don't understand why, because I live this way. If it wasn't for Vince Russo, half the stuff that we got in the Attitude Era would never have happened.
And Ed Ferrara too. Like that's a big part of my story that I always, and I feel bad because I get that, like some interviews I do that I leave this out. So I was at Improv Olympic and I was doing a show called World News Tonight where they needed Lucha Libre spot for this one segment. And Ed Ferrara was the guest on there that night. And Ed Ferrara and I ended up closing down the bar at Improv Olympic till 4 a.m, drinking beers while he let me kind of mark out and pick his brain about the Attitude Era. This is before I had ever trained. And he told me that I needed to go to OVW. I had just gone to WrestleMania. I just gone to ECW one night stand in the Hammerstein Ballroom and gone back to Chicago. And I was like, all right, man, it's either pursue the Saturday Night Live HBO dream or really go for the wrestling. And that's when I moved to Louisville. I started going to Louisville and then moved there for OVW. So I've had the Russo Ferrara connection in a weird way in my universe, like come up as how it guided me. And then to got me to a point of credibility, where if Vince Russo is telling me that I'm a better mind than 95% of the people he's ever worked with in this business, I can't ask for much more than that out of this life.
I totally agree on that, because to me, Vince Russo is somebody who he's very creative with what he does.
Sure.
And like I said before, if it wasn't for him, who knows what the Attitude Era would have been like? Because
you know what the highest rated Attitude Era segment was?
Not what?
Stevie Richards' Right to Censor.
But that doesn't shock me though, because the bigger heels are the ones that are going to draw the bigger rating.
That's right, bro. So now you're dealing with the best writer, the top draw in the Attitude Era, and a guy who's been humbled many times, so he's got no ego. And then me, the hungry guy who is blackballed as the secret weapon. So it's like this perfect storm of have-nots and outcasts who cannot be denied. You might not want us coming into the castle through the front gate, but we're going over the wall whether you like it or not. So like that's just where we're at. And right now I have a series on my patreon.com/Hamin Media Group called The Consultants, where hey, I never signed the NDA with USA Network. Going through all the notes that I helped to write for 2 years, and you can check it out from 2020 to 2022, the COVID era, the Thunderdome era. We were consulting all that, and you can see where a lot of original ideas like Retribution and other ones came from, and how they only got 20% out of what they should have been. You know what I mean?
Okay, now you brought up Retribution, and I remember when they first debuted, and you didn't know who it was. And I loved the beginning part of it was great.
I did too, because I wrote it. It was supposed to be Antifa, all that shit out back with the fucking Molotov cocktail and all that. And then 6 weeks later, they're wrestling in the ring. Terrible. But
that's what I didn't understand. It's like, okay, you have this group of people who are coming in who are terrorizing your show, why would you turn around and go, oh, yeah, folks, we're going to put out a press release. Retribution has signed with Monday Night Raw.
And Mia Yim goes, we're not terrorists on social media. Meanwhile, in the streets in Portland, they're kicking in windows and flipping cop cars, bro. Like that's what I'm saying. These kids who wanted to become wrestlers, the social media poison, the ego, the inability to maintain your superstar status is pervasive through all these locker rooms, bro. And you see it with Braun, you see it with Ali, you see it with all of them, dude. With CM Punk and the fucking crew over there, with Sammy Guevara, with all of them, bro. It's a lot of childish bullshit. You ever think you'd see Psycho Sid or Big John Studd like crying the blues, out in public about what they're upset about or their emotional feelings? It's just a ridiculous era of children having the top spots.
But you know what's funny? You brought up before about how Stevie Richards was the biggest heel back in, one of the biggest heels back in the Attitude Era. You look at one of the biggest heels now, and that's MJF.
Yeah.
And with him, what I love with him is he's not somebody who plays a character.
No, he's a Long Island dick, and he plays with his truths, and he gets his Jewish stuff in, and I think that's all super smart, because when you're talking about where I'm trained with improvisation, a foundation book in that, the kind of a beginner's book, is called Truth in Comedy. So if you play the character true, it's undeniable to your audience. Then you play to the height of your character's emotional and intelligence, and then the audience will come along with you. That's why I can play into 9/11 truth at the highest levels or the lowest levels when they intro me. How tall am I?
Yeah, I'm
9'11". How much do I weigh? 911 pounds. Like, I'm just gonna keep pressing those buttons, like. And MJF does very much the same thing. And here's the other thing, probably one of the 2 or 3 few guys I think in wrestling that I would classify myself alongside. Why? Because MJF's a theater kid who started when he was 5 years old. So did I. He's a song and dance kid all the way through high school, because that's what you have as your performance outlet. Same. He went and did, wanted to get into wrestling, and now he went to a wrestling school, Pat Buck. I worked Pat Buck and managed him for a year and a half. Like, another guy who's very much like that, in my opinion, is Dolph Ziggler and his younger brother, Ryan Nemeth. Ryan Nemeth went through Improv Olympic. He's a great writer, a great movie producer and screenwriter as well. Mm-hmm. And even Jericho went to the Groundlings and studied improv to some degree. So there's a handful of people that can execute the vision and the natural ability of what this business needs. But the problem is when you see guys like him or me on the indies or him on TV doing that good of a job, and then you see other indie guys who have a spot who look like deer in headlights, that's a problem. We can't have that much of a disconnect where we have such great performers and such amateur performers on the same show together. Like, everybody needs to either be at the level of MJF, or you shouldn't be on our TV show.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And you look at but what's also my thing with MJF is when you see him on social media, he doesn't change who he is. He's still the same dick.
Well, social media is the best weapon we have in our arsenal as professional wrestlers to enhance our storyline, to work the crowd, to get people buzzing, to promote. But instead, a lot of these asshole talents, I'll call them that, whether it's Braun, and no, I'm Braun on TV, I'm Adam Shearer over here. Oh, I'm Alexa Bliss, but I'm Lexi Kaufman over here. Oh, I'm whatever over here, and I'm Trish Parker. No, you're not. You're just those regular people, because you're killing all the investment the WWE is putting into you to get your gimmick over as a world-class superstar, because you want to mark out and go take beach pictures as sexy Finn Balor while you're supposed to be dominatrix Judgment Day. You can't have it both ways. You're either going to use it as a tool to become better at your craft, or you're going to be just like every other civilian and be a mark and have to have your own little personal Instagram. And any one of them that does that, I'd fine them $5,000 every week until they stopped it.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. And I go back to Tommaso Ciampa after he turned on Johnny Gargano.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through that stretch of he never really had social media, he had no entrance music. And I was like, this is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, if everybody's doing the one way, you do the other, right? Very Paul Heyman. If Vince is doing big bright lights and spectacle, I don't have the budget for that. I'm going to strip it down and do one light over the ring and darkness around it. You know what I mean? To focus it. So you hide your weaknesses until you can make them your strengths.
I totally agree with you on that. Last question I got for you for this evening.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the opportunity to enter the ring against any competitor right now or from the past, doesn't matter what promotion they're in, who would it be?
Who is my dream competitor from now or the past, man? Well, if it's obviously been Hamin, I need somebody who is going to be a top USA guy. So for me, I would probably have to say a Kurt Angle would be a pretty awesome feud for me. Jake Hager, when he was We the People, would have been a very cool run as well. You know, I've been fortunate to work with three top guys that were USA, from Sergeant Slaughter, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and the Patriot, and even Muhammad Hassan. So, like all the guys, and Piper too. So all the guys I might check off, you know.
Yeah.
And Tommy Dreamer is probably my favorite ECW guy, and I've been able to work 3 or 4 matches with him now. So I've had, like I said, these unbelievable opportunities that I didn't even really get into this business to do that, and I've been able to live that dream. So I'd probably have to go Kurt Angle or John Cena, because that John Cena moment, like, we had a great match at Six Flags. It was our biggest house ever, 3,500 draw. It was all thanks to Cena being there. They loved the flag match. It was great with Conway. It paid off everything. I wouldn't change a thing. But afterwards, I'm standing up on this upper deck, and Cena comes out on a Humvee with 13 Marines, and he looks up at me, and like the crowd is like pointing to me like they want him to kill me, and like you could just feel what they wanted, and it never paid off. So as much as I respect Kurt Angle, that John Cena moment was there, and I had to kind of wave goodbye to it. So if I could get a chance to take the FU from Cena, I think that would give me more than every moment that I could ever need, you know. And I'm not like I'm just a huge Cena fan or anything. It's just that always sticks out in my mind, in my career, of like, ooh, there it is. But they made it up to me. Not made it up to me. They didn't have to make anything up to me. They put me in the ring with Foley later, and I got sockoed and all that kind of shit too. So very, 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 very fortunate and thankful for all my mentors who gave me those opportunities, and all the guys who were more well-known than me that did business or beat the shit out of me. I guess I did business for them. So,
exactly.
You know,
but Ben, I appreciate you being on here tonight. It really meant a lot. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up, especially for the wrestling stuff? Not obviously you can promote both, but I know you may have some stuff coming up for Immortal as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, we definitely do. Channelattitude.com, though, is the best place to subscribe for Hamin Media Group. We review all your shows. I have a great staff, great interactive community at Hamin Media Group on Facebook as well, with pick'em challenges, with weekly watch-alongs, and just the best wrestling fans of the highest order are there at Hamin Media Discussion Group on Facebook. And they love the shows for the watch-alongs as well. And as well, patreon.com/Hamin Media Group for the consultants and watch alongs of my matches and extra special content there. If you guys want to get the shirts, you can always go to prowrestlingtees.com/Ben Hamin. If you want me to cut the promo on your ex-wife or your kids or your boss or your girlfriend or whatever, I'm happy to do that. Cameo.com/Ben Hamin. And I'll be at Immortal on what's the next show? The 19th, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we're back at the Fitness Mill where we debuted last month in Utica, New York, and looking forward to beating the shit out of all those infidels some more. And then now that the border of Canada is reopened, December 3rd, I got a feeling I might be crossing over there to do an invasion of Crossfire Wrestling as well. So I know there's a big main event. My man Congo Kong, one of my other tag team partners, is over there, and it's been a while since I beat the shit out of some syrup sucking scumbags from Canada. So I'm looking forward to the end of this month and putting a beating on all of them. And there's a big spring ahead, big Arab Spring coming. There's a movie that I'm going to be doing and a lot of cool stuff, man. So check us out online, but love that Russo brand and HMG at channelattitude.com. The best minds in wrestling. If you love the real talk here, you're going to love it over there.
Guys, you would be foolish not to.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that much right now. Ben, you are more than welcome back on the show anytime you want. The door is open for you.
Well, you're more than welcome to come to Immortal and bring $5, and I'll slap that chubby little face of yours, moron. I'll be happy to. You'll be out there running a 5K. You'll be running the Boilermaker, placing in the top 20 by the end of the year. You'll be out there, moron.
But for Ben Hamin, I am John. This has been another Around the Ropes podcast, YouTube exclusive. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
YOLO.